So after all, 47th Brigade of Ukrainian Army did the miracle stopping the Russian offensive in Kursk. For the third day consecutive, Russia continued their assaults, but they lost already 80 of the different vehicles, well, including supply vehicles, but nevertheless the losses for them are record ones. However, as you may see in this area, Russians managed to move forward. They even captured two of the villages, Pokrovsky and Tolstoluk, but their assault was stopped. The Ukrainian army left the positions with no losses. So how was it possible to stop the Russian attack? Well, Ukraine delivered mines for the long distance using the special shells. Shells given to Ukraine by our American partners and also produced in Ukraine as well. I'm speaking about the ammunition for the Stugna P system. Nevertheless, I expect the Russian attacks to continue because they accumulated quite a lot of forces. At the same time, I do expect that Ukraine has the chance to stop the Russian major assault in the Kursk region and continue to hold the territory. At least from what I saw with those mines, it might work. Ukraine just needs to mine the territory upon retreatment, and in the end, Russians will just run out of their forces. Here we have the video presented by the 47th Brigade of the Ukrainian army deployed in Kursk and how they ambushed the Russian vehicles using the FPV drones. And also, as you can see here, the Stugna P system, which is made in Ukraine. Plus again, lots of the FPV drones, and definitely this is the Russian armored vehicle, the BTR, with some of the infantry on top and inside. This particular FPV hit exactly the only evacuation door in that BTR. Those kind of the videos I post on my Telegram channel, so please check it out in the video description below. And by the way, hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go. As you know, I also monitored the Russian channels and they're getting crazy about their failure in the Kursk region. They underestimated the Ukrainian side and went full forward on the minefields. At the same time, Ukraine continued to use the best forces, one of the best in the Kursk region, equipped with the Western-made vehicles like this one. And so far, they're successful in stopping the enemy. So in general, this area still holds, but I have the information that Russia started one more attack not far away from Sudzha, and we'll see tomorrow the result of this Russian attack. Putin says lots of the stuff about the reality on the front line, but here reality is that Russian territory is under Ukrainian control in the Kursk region. My friends, if you like the job that I do on my YouTube channel, you may also consider supporting me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page I'll put just in the video description below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. But again, guys, if we go to Ukrainian front lines, for example, Kurahove, their enemy propelled quite a lot. So it was a couple of days ago and it is today. They're very close to Kurahove, and according to my information, the battle is ongoing right in the city already. It is somewhere over here, and yes, the deep state military map tells that Russian forces went into this private sector or dacha of Kurahove. On the 3D map we also may see this confirmation that definitely Russia assaults, but here we have the river between the dacha area and the town itself. By the way, this dam was collapsed by some of the kaboom. I believe that Ukraine did it after all, because it prevents the Russian army to attack Ukrainian positions in the city from the northern side. For Russia, it's just not possible to kaboom this dam with the road. By the way, the railroad was kaboomed well before. Alright, so we definitely have the confirmation of the deep state military map source relative to the drone image that Russians went to the local school and occupied it. They actually advanced with a big convoy. Many of the vehicles were kaputted, but they were fast in landing their infantry forces, which went into the school building. It's early to say about the robust control over this area by the Russian army. So now Russia has a single attack vector, but they want to create one more to bypass Kurahove from this side. Plus, they also may turn straight to the north, and judging on the information coming, it seems like Ukrainian armed forces has already received the order to leave Kurahove in a close perspective. At least there were some of the reports that brigades are leaving their positions. Russia also tells about the possible encirclement of this area with lots of the settlements. And definitely the distance here is not that big, but we have a couple of the rivers there, which are the natural obstacles for any sort of the army. That's why I do not expect this maneuver from the Russian army, but they may push from this area where there is is no river, but from the south it will be hard for them to advance because here the river is kind of big. But what Russians did, they've cut this supply road, which was the only one for those villages. Here Russians are just a single field away, it means that they've already cut this road. So in the very short-term perspective, I do expect that Ukraine will withdraw the forces from this place, from this entire area. I expected it to happen in 1 or 2 months, but as you can see, it's a very fast Russian army advancement. For the last 24 hours, Russia has achieved 2 of the major goals. Firstly, they went into Kurahove town, and secondly, they went very close to this road, and basically they may cut it with their AK rifles because it's a very short distance here. Ukraine is unable to send their supplies here any longer. It means that Ukrainian army should withdraw from this area very soon. Well, actually there is also the variant through this crossroad and all of those villages, but here Russia is also very close. I would say that there are no safe roads for Ukrainian army supply, as well as there are no safe roads for Ukrainian army evacuation or leaving from this area. That's why it should be done already during the night time. Ukraine should withdraw the forces. At least that's what I see from this military map. If the weather gets worse, it will be very hard to use the field roads. But if the weather is good, Ukraine may just try to go across those fields. You can see that mostly it's the leveled ground. But in the front, some of the bridges needed to cross the river, and I can see probably the one. Well, maybe it's not the bridge. And here it could be not the ground, but the swamped area, so for sure some of the engineering equipment should be used. The area I'm also concerned about is the Kharkiv region, Kupiansk direction, and there Russia moved quite a lot for the several days. They're now expanding their bridgehead, and their goal is to advance to the north and occupy this entire area. We know that this region is important for Putin because he spoke about it several of the times, but Russia didn't put the Kharkiv region into their constitution. They were speaking about Zaporizhia, Kherson, Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts. So why do they continue to waste their army for the Kharkiv region instead of concentrating on, as they call, the Russian territories? Well, the answer here is very simple. Russia considers Ukraine, entire Ukraine, as the Russian territory. The circus with their constitution and all of those fake referendums is just a show. Putin is oriented to occupy Ukraine no matter what, no matter on their losses. He wants to achieve this goal and that's it. He will not listen to anyone, including a future United States president. Oh, such a mishap. Russia lost one more K-52 helicopter with this pilot who obviously deserved that. And here we have the tribute to the crew and to the helicopter from the Russian Z bloggers. Interesting. It was the ambush strike, as they say, and recently Russia started to lose many of their helicopters, which is good for Ukraine. One more big question is whether Russia is ready to start a massive assault on the south, somewhere in Zaporizhia. We have numerous of the sources report about this case, and they rely on the information that's coming from Ukrainian intelligence. Ukraine says that Zaporizhia city is secured against any sort of the threats, but Zaporizhia, as you can see, is not that far away from the front lines. But if you look at this larger scale, I think that the aim for the Russian Federation for the next year could be the Dnipro city. Well, at least they will try to advance to it from the south and also from the Pokrovsk direction. Yeah, you may say that this sounds unrealistic, that Russia is far away from Dnipro city, but after all, judging on the current Russian movement, this task is not unreal for the Russian army in a long-term perspective. And obviously on the way to Dnipro, Russia may occupy at least part of Zaporizhia. For this bigger mission, they need to announce a new massive mobilization and mobilize at least 500,000 new soldiers. Only in that case it could be real, but again, Ukraine doesn't have robust defense after Pokrovsk. There was some of the defense near Pokrovsk and Kurahove, but Russia already broke through it. And if Russia occupies Pokrovsk, they may go forward with a higher pace, because in this entire area there are no big settlements, so Ukraine is unable to use the ground for defense. Without the settlements, you absolutely need to have the robust defense lines. Well, the good thing that Ukraine built some of the defense not far away from Zaporizhia. That's the good news, but the bad news that in general Russia has the other ways to advance to Dnipro. Now the distance from the front lines to the Dnipro city is 155 kilometers. roughly 100 miles. But if you put the pedal, you can cover this distance in a matter of 1.5 hours on average car. So after all, it's not as far as it looks, and there will be the threat for the Dnipro city. Russian soldiers continue to complain about the terrible conditions in the Russian army. Many of them who want to save their lives are running away to the fields, to the hills, wherever. It is crazy because they say that it's okay to be under the threat from your enemy, but it's not okay to be under the threat from your own command, which promises to just zero them for any sort of the wrongdoing. And this guy is hiding somewhere in the basement of Torix city. He said that he was given a suicide order to just go to Ukrainian positions and kaput himself. That was the area where they couldn't hide, and FPV drones did their job. He is the only survivor of his team. And he afraid to go back because after all, Russian command will send him back to fight. The information about the kaput of the Russian general was confirmed. He plus some of the Russian officers were zeroed by HIMARS. An article from The Economist: Zelensky faces a power struggle in 2025. Well, 100% the actions of the Ukrainian government are not that popular among Ukrainians. And Zelensky personally continued to lose his rating. For this reason, as The Economist says, Zelensky plans to start new elections, which by the way should have happened this year. They say about the end of May as the possible time for the elections. Now I would say that it's not impossible to vote in Ukraine, yes, even now that the war is ongoing, because we have the electronic data system for all of the Ukrainian citizens. It is called DIA, where you basically have your entire documents like driving license, passports, and so on. And there you may create your digital signature, your personal identificator. I did, for example, to send the tax forms to Ukrainian authorities, so why not to vote using this system? But I think that Zelensky wants to get elected once again, even though before he promised that he is running just for a single term. People in Ukraine start to lose the morale because of the corruption cases among the Ukrainian prosecution office and medical services. Also the strange attitude towards Ukrainian defenders who barely have enough funds if they are veterans and obtained wounds on the front lines. Also there are many conflicts between the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian High Military Command, and Ukrainian volunteers and some of the military commanders. Well, luckily Syrskyi decided to pull the reverse gear, lower his ambitions, and here was the meeting between Ukrainian volunteers and Ukrainian General Commander Syrskyi. Syrskyi was not okay with the truthful information that some of our volunteers spread around that the Ukrainian army absolutely needs reforms. So there was the meeting organized, I guess it was organized by the president's office, and they took those pictures to lower the temperature because Chernenko really accused Syrskyi of the wrongdoing, that he has been directly attacked by Syrskyi and some of the high government officials for his volunteer job. And because sometimes he tells the truth of the Ukrainian army reforms which are needed, as I told you, also many of the times. So for now this conflict is over, I guess, by Zelensky. Has Zelensky the chances of being elected during the next presidential elections in Ukraine? Well, yes, but there is the big part of Ukrainian society which is strongly against him. How do I know it? Well, basically open any sort of the media of Zelensky, read the comments of people, and yes, those are mostly not the bots. You may check their accounts, those are the live profiles. The comments, I would say, are mostly not positive. But still, there's also a big part of Ukrainian society which continue to support Zelensky as the Ukrainian president. So if the information about the possible elections in Ukraine is truthful, it seems like Zelensky is sure that he is going to be elected. An interesting video is coming from China. As you can see, this is some sort of the new airplane with interesting shapes. It looks like the airplane from the X-Men or something. This is the China-made airplane. However, from the front it looks like Donald Duck or something. What I can say that it's just a decoy and there are no engines inside. The construction itself is kind of strange. Because if you want to make the 5th generation stealth airplane, you shouldn't put the engines that far away from the fuselage line. all the parts should be as close together as possible. Like we see, for example, with this China-made F-35 copy J-35, see the smooth forms and nothing is pointing out from the fuselage or from the airplane construction, everything as minimal as it should be. But here with this huge donor deck and with all of those engine intakes just pumping out from the airplane construction, it dramatically increases the vulnerability of being spotted by the radars. Smooth forms, donor deck. I think that this airplane construction is presented there just for the joy purposes. But some experts started to speak about the wonder warfare that China presented. France wants to boost the supplyment of their guided aviation bombs to Ukrainian army. We are speaking about 600 of the new units which Ukraine obtains till the end of this year, so in 1.5 months. There are different types of those bombs. Ukraine obtains usually 250 kg, but it could be up to 1 ton and the gliding range is roughly 70 kilometers. Ukraine has also obtained some of the Hawk air defense systems from Taiwan. It is interesting because I thought that Taiwan needed those air defense systems in case China dares to attack it. And about Europe, there are more and more signs that countries are preparing their armies for the possible conflict with Russia. The European Union wants to revise its budget and spend billions of euros for the army support. Yes, I always tell that it's kind of strange that the European Union doesn't have its own army. They have their own parliament, they have their own currency, they have no borders between the countries, like custom borders, so it's the true union, but they don't have its own separate army, which could be also the part of NATO in general, but controlled from a single place in Europe, to make the defense of the European Union really capable. Hopefully in the close-by perspective there will be some of the steps done to create this European military organization. Boris Johnson says British troops may have to go to Ukraine if Trump cuts support. I think that it is nonsense, at least in a close or even middle-term perspective. For the long-term perspective, it's really hard to predict what might happen in Ukraine or around Ukraine. But judging on the de-escalation policy from our partners, no one will send their forces to Ukraine. I don't see it. My friends, and for now, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.